It's become so trendy as of late for people to sort of look back and talk about the glory days of racing and how things used to be and back in the day. But I think right now we're entering a new golden era of super stock and thunder car racing. If you look around the province, the division is incredibly good right now. You got gritty veterans, you got rising stars. It's a beautiful sort of mishmash of generational talent from Peterborough to Delaware and Sauble to Sunset. And I think one driver that personifies the gritty veteran role better than most is Delaware Speedway track champion Gary Adriaensen. Gary, joining me on the line right now. Gary, thank you so much, my man, for taking the time out to have a bit of a chat with me.
Well, thanks for having me, sir. I've always got time to talk to the man, Spencer Lewis.
Now we were talking off recording about what's going on with your 2016 plans. You mentioned that as happy as you are with your program, Delaware's gone and sort of shuffled the deck on you a little bit. Tell me about what you're having to do now to prepare for the rules changes that Delaware's brought in for 2016.
Well, we're kind of entering new territory. Like we've had a kind of a notebook, if you will, for the last couple of years. Tried some new things last year. Some of them worked. Most of them did work. Some of them didn't work. This year now, though, being that it's a rules year for Delaware, they've changed the rule books. We're allowed to run 100 pounds less weight now. Our percentages have changed. Plus, there's been a couple other small things that I don't think they're necessarily going to make handling any better, but it's giving us the ability now to fine-tune the chassis. So really, I mean, everybody's kind of back to the drawing board. It's really whoever's going to kind of figure their stuff out the fastest is going to have a huge advantage. And that might be what wins or loses a championship this year, just whoever can get their stuff figured out the quickest. We've got some ideas. We're going to try changing up some spring packages and just see what works. We've got a couple ideas which way we're going to go, but I still don't have the springs ordered yet. So, we may even just try sticking out to what we already have and just see how it works and just change the percentages a little bit. I mean, no sense in spending money if you don't necessarily need to. So, other than that, I mean, we're picking away at it slow. The body just got back from paint today. So, it's starting to take shape again.
It's so interesting that now it's almost like everyone's starting from scratch all over again. And you've got like an arms race of teams trying to hit on that sweet spot before the guy next to them can do it. It's incredible. And when you look at the Delaware roster, I mean, you got 6, 7, 8 guys, or guys or girls that can win on any given night. It's incredibly tight at the top of this roster.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you're running against guys like Darrell Lake, Brandon Verhoeven, I mean, that kid is just so talented. Matt Robley, Kathleen Hosang, Trevor Culver, Shea Gemmel was in there last year. He's moving up to the APC this year. But, anybody in the top 7 cars can win a race on any given night. I mean, most of the drivers that I just named have led laps throughout the season and with ease. I mean, usually it comes down to, if you make a mistake, the guy behind you is good enough to capitalize that you cannot make a mistake. I mean, I lost 2 races last year by literally a bumper at the line. I mean, that's how tight the racing is at Delaware. I mean, one to Brandon Verhoeven and the other to my mentor, Paul Fothergill. I mean, if you're going to lose a race, what better guys to lose to, if you will?
Fothergill is a certified legend at Delaware, and I think it's a crime that he's not recognized more outside of the region, that there are people outside of Delaware that have never heard of him, but the numbers that he's put up at Delaware Speedway, it's pretty staggering across a myriad of different divisions.
He's a multi-champion in multiple divisions. I mean, 3/4 of what I know from racing Friday nights at Delaware is from Paul. I mean, the guy took me under his wing and taught me so much. I mean, we have the same driving style. I mean, I learned how to drive Friday nights just by following him. I would start out in front of him and I'd say, look, I know you're faster than me. Go ahead and get by me. I'm going to try and keep up with you as long as I can. I just logged laps after laps after laps and followed him as often as I could, as long as I could keep up with him.
Did you know him off of the track or away from the speedway, or did your relationship, is it based solely off of meeting him in the pits of Delaware?
It was based solely off of meeting him at Delaware. I moved up from the enduro class, started racing Friday nights in the truck division, and he was racing trucks at the time, and it just started from there. I mean, he lives literally 5 minutes down the road from me. I mean, we talk all the time. We hang out every now and then. If I see the shop doors open on my way home from work, I stop in, and it's usually never a 5-minute visit. It's usually a couple hours.
Yeah. Now it's interesting that you mentioned that you came out of the enduro division, and I think that most guys and girls that are let's say in your age bracket probably did the same thing. That was pretty much the way to get involved with racing out on that side of the province. Now Delaware has changed significantly in the last few years. The enduro division, I guess they changed and it sort of became the V8 muscle cars, and then they still had some enduros, and now do they not have enduros at all anymore now moving into 2015?
No, like the enduro from back in the 90s that I kind of grew up in, I guess, or came up the ranks through, it just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's kind of evolved now. The enduro has become the V8 stock, which essentially is like years ago your street stock back then, but now they've gotten rid of the enduro, but it's kind of been swallowed up by the bone stock class, which isn't quite mini stock. It's got the essence of the enduro because it's all supposed to be stock, no real modifications. What enduro was, what it was back in the day when it first started, that's what the feeling was, and now, it's just evolved into that. I mean, and when I started racing, there was no 4-cylinder racing at Delaware at all. So you had the full-size car, and that was enduro.
Now tell me, as a grassroots guy, because that's what you're that gritty blue-collar veteran. You're not a helmet toter. You're not a silver spoon kid. You sort of did all this yourself and used the enduro as a springboard into greater things. And you've certainly taken advantage of every opportunity that's come your way in terms of that, with all your success in the trucks and the super stocks. In your opinion, do the bone stocks offer the same vessel to bring this guy out, to bring the guy or the girl out of the stands and get them onto the racetrack and help move them up the ranks the same way that enduro did for people in your age bracket back in the 90s?
I would say it does. It's still entry level into racing. I mean, the average guy should be able to build a car for, $1,000, maybe $2,000, and some safety equipment. And I mean, majority of the cost to get into racing, even especially at the entry level like that, is safety equipment. I mean, you got to have your fire suit, you got to have your helmet. You can't cheap out. I mean, you can't put a price on your safety. But yeah, I think that it can. Back in the enduro, when I started out, you were racing 250 laps. Like, that's not quite the case now. I mean, racing enduro back then, it was more of a survival race than it was, your Friday night, 35 laps, it's time to go right away. But I think a guy can definitely come up the ranks. I mean, guys have done it. I mean, it happens every week or every year, a new guy's moving up out of the class up to the trucks or even to right out into super stock. I mean, and some guys they come into the super stock or truck division without even entering into the 4-cylinder. DJ Christie, he come out of go-karts and right into a super stock, and he had quite a good season last year.
I get the feeling that kid's going to be something special. when I talk to him, when I watch him race, I think with a little bit of polishing and a lot of seat time, he could really, really be something that Delaware people or Delaware fans are going to remember for a long time.
I think so. I mean, I'll admit I was a little worried or concerned. Probably not the best words to choose, but I was definitely aware.
Skeptical?
That skeptical, exactly. But and I talked to Jay, his dad, about it, and he was pretty confident that he was going to be able to handle his own. And I mean, you could definitely see major improvement as the year went on. And, he got more comfortable, a lot more confidence. And I mean, that's just seat time. And I mean, and again, running enduro, I mean, 250 laps a night. What more? You get more seat time in one of those races than you do half a season running Friday nights.
That's when I put that in perspective, that's 9 nights at New Smyrna, If you were to go down and run the World Series, you'd be doing about 250 laps. So when you put it in perspective in one race, yeah, it's a lot of seat time. It's a lot of different ways to acclimate yourself to your race car, to the track, to your competition. And do you ever see that style of enduro making a return, or are those days just dead and gone out of Delaware?
I think unfortunately those days are probably dead and gone. I mean, it's car count. I mean, unless you got the car count to put on those kind of races, because that was really the whole essence of the entertainment of that race from a fan's point of view. You got 200 and some odd cars out on the half mile oval like that. The speeds aren't up there, therefore, your chances of getting hurt were a lot less just because you couldn't get up to speed. There's just nowhere to go.
Right.
And the other factor of that racing too is rain or shine, you're going.
How many races did you win? How many races did you win in the rain out there?
Actually, in the enduro, the only race I ever won was I went up and tried an enduro race in Varney, and I won that race. But as far as enduro race at Delaware, the only thing I won there was a 50-lap qualifier back in the old enduro nationals.
So you were a bit of a slow starter then in terms of getting victory lane.
Yeah, it wasn't until trucks that I really got my feet wet and started having some major success.
Let me test my Gary Adriaensen knowledge here. Okay, so
all right.
All right. So as far as I know, you're a two-time truck champion, right? So that'd be 12 and 13, 2012, 2013.
Yep.
And then you came into Super Stock in 14, won the Rookie of the Year, and then came out and won the championship in 2015. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All that from a guy that didn't have a whole lot of success in terms of getting to victory lane in an enduro car. It's funny how your career has sort of turned around.
I ran it was 7 or 8 years in enduro. Then I moved up into truck. My first year in truck, I drove with a friend of mine where we kind of split. I did majority of the driving. He'd raced a couple races. No major success. And then I decided I was going to do it on my own. Won a couple heat races in that year. I bought the truck from Steve Lovey and won a couple of heat races that year. Then the following year, I won the very first race right out of the gate. And then won another race shortly after that. Led the points for a little bit, but then, at that time, Chad Reinen was racing, Fothergill was racing, Jeff Schauer was racing.
It was Murderer's Row, man. Those are three pretty big names to toss around there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it was still good. I was still having success. I think that year I finished third in the points. The following year, moved up, won another couple races, couple more heat races, and lost the championship to Chad Reinen that year by 19 points. It came down to the final night, and I ended up cutting a tire, and he didn't. So I lost the championship that year. Otherwise, it could have been 3 in a row. And then the next 2 years, I won the back-to-back, and, we've had some success. I mean, last year, Rookie of the Year, set the track record as a rookie. This year, defended that record, and, Brandon took it away from me this year, and then I went out that same night shortly after him and broke his record again. I mean, again, Brandon Verhoeven, that kid is so talented. That kid's going somewhere.
I think a lot of people might overlook him outside of Delaware because he's not flashy, because he doesn't say a lot. He's very soft-spoken. But if you go to Delaware and watch him compete, I think a lot of people would agree with you that he really, truly is something special and that he's on his way.
Yeah, I mean, he got me. I was leading one race, and he caught me, and he was faster than me, and I knew he was faster than me. And I mean, you see that kid coming from behind you. I mean, I still get intimidated when he's coming behind me. And he gave me a bump and run in the middle of the corner. It was perfectly planned, perfectly executed. Got me just a little sideways where he could get to the throttle before I could. And, he took it away from me. And I went back and congratulated him and said, good job. I got no problem with a bump and run, especially a clean one. He didn't take me out. He didn't move me. He's a legitimate bump and run as, short track racing. It's all about that.
I mean, I guess it's like the old saying that iron sharpens iron. And I guess when you're racing against this level of competition every single Friday, you really have no choice but to get better every time you're on the racetrack.
Oh, absolutely. And as long as you can learn from your mistakes and not be too proud to ask questions. I mean, there's always somebody that's better. There's always somebody that's faster. There's always somebody that's smarter. As long as you're okay and with asking somebody else questions, I mean, you're just going to learn. I mean, you kind of pick and choose who you talk to or who you listen to, and pick and choose the information that they feed you. Some guys are going to tell you honest information. Other guys are going to tell you something that they think you're going to want to hear, or just to not give away their so-called secrets. But
so tell me right now, has life come full circle for you, where you were the young buck asking Paul Fothergill questions, and now there's youngsters that are sort of picking your brain? Has that happened yet, now that you're the champion?
Absolutely. The funny thing is, I talked about my mentor, Paul Fothergill. I mean, you got a rising star like Trevor Culver referred to me as his mentor. I mean, that just kind of just doesn't even sound right, but and I still kind of find that a little weird, but it's an honor that somebody like Trevor, thinks of me that way, and that's a pretty good feeling.
Delaware's got a lot of young talent right now. There's a lot of kids that are on their way, that are on the move. It's a good time to be a Delaware fan, and of course Trevor's right within that wheelhouse of being this rising star that I think a lot of people stood up and took notice of him with some of the runs that he had on the APC tour. I know that he's bouncing back from his automobile accident right now, but I'm sure that when the time comes in the spring, he's going to be one that's going to be trying to knock you off your perch there at the top of the Super Stock standings.
That kid's got a broken leg right now, and he's probably worked more on his car than I have with two healthy legs. I was just talking to him today, actually, text messaging him back and forth, and it's just incredible the amount of drive and ambition he has. I mean, for him not to go somewhere, he was working on a deal this year to run APC, and it fell through for him. But when he comes to me and asks me to be a spotter, I mean, of all the people he's got on his roster that he can choose from, I mean, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good feeling.
Now, the APC series has been all that anyone's wanted to talk about for the last 12 months. Obviously, being out in that area, it's a hotbed of pro late model racing out in the London area. Does pro late model racing interest you in your life after Super Stock? I mean, if you can knock down back-to-back championships, are you going to start looking at maybe going out on tour with a late model?
Well, I mean, who wouldn't want to run late model? I mean, especially when you're going to go out and run, side by side with guys like Matt Pritico, Sean Chenoweth, Dale Shaw, the champion, Jamie Cox, all those guys. It comes down to cash. Mm-hmm. If I've got great sponsors, and all my sponsors have been with me for multiple years, they're extremely supportive. But I mean, to run a traveling series as tight as competition would be with APC, I think that I wouldn't say it's way out of the question, but I don't see it in the near future. My budget for Super Stock is a decent one, and I wouldn't want to enter into the APC world without having full potential. I wouldn't expect to do something right away and have nowhere near the success that that I have had in the Super Stock division. But I would never say never, but it's definitely just a cash flow thing, really.
Well, I mean, from what I can tell, you've been a pretty patient guy from starting in enduro and sort of very slowly working your way up. It wouldn't surprise me if we eventually see you on the APC roster, see you on a pro late model roster somewhere else. Maybe not next year, maybe not a year after, but I think that if you can continue putting up these big numbers, I mean, these marketing partners are going to come knocking for you.
I would hope so. I mean, like I said, I ran 8 years. I think it was 8 years in enduro, 6 years in trucks, and then I'm only in my second year in Super Stock. And I mean, guys like Darrell Lake have been in that Super Stock class for multiple years. I think he's been in there for 10 years, and he's finished second 5 times. And I was very fortunate to win it in my second year. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I never thought that would happen. I mean, Darrell and I are good friends, and we kind of joke around, let's go do this and finish 1-2. I mean, yeah, everybody says that, but I didn't honestly think that it would happen, especially not in my second year.
And it came down to the final night, right, with you and Daryl?
Yeah. It was 8. I think it was 8 points going into the night.
That's insane.
You know, so I mean, I could have. He finished. Brandon won the race. Daryl finished second, and I finished third that night. I mean, in the feature, and I could have overtaken Daryl that night. I was faster than he was, but I didn't want to take the chance of putting it into his hands that way. I mean, all he would have to do is, you know, bump and run, or even if he meant to drive it in a little hard and didn't mean to hit me, but takes me out accidentally, but he got to get going again. You know, all I had to do was keep him in the windshield. You know, race big picture.
That's what it takes to win championship, my man. I mean, I don't need to tell you, you're 3 championships deep now at Delaware Speedway, which is pretty incredible. You're gearing up for 2016. You mentioned that it's sounding as though the car count is going to be on the up this year with the Delaware Super Stock. How many cars do you imagine you'll be racing against on opening night 2016?
Well, from what I hear, obviously, like I say, Shea Gemmel's moved up to APC, so we've lost that car. Daryl Lake's still up in the air. I haven't really heard yet what he's doing for next year because they've made some rule changes regarding his car. But Ron Sheridan, everybody in Ontario knows who Ron Sheridan is. His boy's coming up with a brand new ride, so that's a new car. There's a couple guys that have run in the V8 stock class last year that have bought some other rides out there that are already running super stock. So I think we're going to have about 6 or 7 new cars come into the class this year. So, I mean, it wouldn't be surprised to see 25 cars out on opening night.
That's fantastic news. I mean, that's
a great field of cars.
And when you look at the quality of teams at the top, I mean, you can get that level of talent and still have 25 cars. That's the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to go out and win. I mean, it's always fun to go out and win every race or potentially finish 1-2 every race. I mean, that's every racer's dream. But at the same time, if there's no competition there, it's not as fun. You know, like to win a championship in the super stock division that I just claimed this year is absolutely 100% the highlight of my career. I mean, that's the most competition I've ever had to race in. So, and it's only going to get tighter.
It's interesting. I spoke to Matt Pritico a couple days ago, and I asked him about the pro late model scene and how they've reverted back to almost to a specials only schedule for their pro late models, the Triple Crown, as opposed to having them every week. And he remarked that it's been difficult in recent years to keep a weekly late model division going at Delaware, and the super stocks have almost been the exact opposite, where it's been gaining strength every year. Is there one thing you can point at that's the reason why the super stocks are headed in a different direction than where the late models are?
I don't know that I could. Again, I've only been in the super stock class for 2 years, so I mean it's been a decent field, like 18, 20 cars for the last couple of years that I've been in it. I mean, I moved up to super stock essentially I got a great deal from J.R. Fitzpatrick when I bought the car that Jeff Schaller was driving for him. It was just my time to move up. I mean, the class, like I said, it was fun to win all the time, but I needed the competition. I wanted to stay, where I felt I could move up and have more of a challenge. And the super stock just seems to be where it's at. I mean, I don't know if there's one thing that makes the super stock so much more popular, but the V8 stock is entry level. The trucks is just slightly above that with, they're allowed to do a little bit more, but the super stock, I mean, it's with the late models gone, it's the premier division. But for me, it was more just, that was the next step to graduate through my career. There was the next level to go to.
As a Delaware Speedway regular, as someone that your program is so reliant on Delaware existing and having a strong facility and a strong program, because you're local to Delaware. It's far to race anywhere else, so you're relying on the Delaware leadership to make the right moves and to make sure that there's a facility for you to be at for years to come. I know that the Delaware, in terms of promoters and managers, has been in a bit of flux in the last decade. As a competitor, are you happy with where you're at right now in terms of who's running Delaware and who's making the decisions out there?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Delaware has kind of got a little bit of a bad rep there a little while ago, but since the DeMellos have taken over, you know, obviously right away you're going to have, you can't please everybody. You're going to have some struggles or some ideas that work and don't work. But, I mean, really the last couple of years, they've really turned it around. I mean, and some people that still, you know, talk down on it, they're still talking about the old era, which it's not the same anymore. The feeling is now it's much better. You know, Justin's very approachable. John Erlin's very approachable. Russ Erlin, very approachable. You can call up any one of these three guys, tell them your concerns, and they'll sit and talk to you. It's not just, yeah, okay, whatever, it's our show, you just do what we say. They'll sit and listen to you. I mean, you might not get the result or like the answer that you want, but they're going to you can voice your concern. They'll listen to you, and they'll take it into account. I mean, I've suggested several things to them that, you know, well, yeah, we never thought of that, but that's a great idea. You know, we'll look into that, you know, but as long as the management's going to listen to you and give you the feeling that that you're somebody, you're not just another whiny driver, which is definitely the case. I mean, you know, they're definitely going somewhere. They're changing race formats. You know, they went to the before we used to have like the fast heat, then the slow heat, like the AB heats type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then a couple of years ago, they switched to all cars every heat. So a full field of heat races. So you race two heats, but a full field in each heat. And then you go and race the feature, full field. I mean, I hated that idea, but it actually worked out really well. You know, years ago we had on a restart it was you know 1, 2, 3 in a line, and then and then I think it was 3, 4 or 4, 5 were started doubling up, and then they changed it a couple years ago to the double file restarts. Basically, right when NASCAR did the double file restarts, it changed.
Yes.
And again, same thing. Well, you know, there's not really the outside line at Delaware, so you worked so hard to get to second place. Now you're going to get freight trained right away. But it's not really. It worked out okay. I mean, it's not that bad. Sometimes you get freight trained, other times you don't.
There's a trend across the province when team owners and drivers get involved at the speedway level that you start to see positive change. I mean, you look at Mark Dilley, a driver, taking over at Sunset, and Luke Ramsey, a team owner, taking over with the APC Tour, and they just bring a fresh perspective. And very much like what Jonathan Erlin and Justin DeMello have been able to do at Delaware, it turns things around, and it changes the entire atmosphere of a speedway.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, Justin and I came up through the ranks. We raced enduro together. We raced trucks together. We competed for Rookie of the Year in trucks, which he won that year. You know, so and John Erlin, I mean, you know, he's also a well-known racer throughout the province, and he does a lot of stuff with Porsche right now. So like he's got so many ideas, and he brings so much to the table. And again, I mean, you can't race or you can't please every racer. Some guys are gonna be upset with you, other guys are gonna be extremely happy with you. But as long as you give it a try, I mean, some of the ideas they came up with, I wasn't happy about, but everybody's on the same page. It's the same result for everybody. So give it a shot. It'll work. It won't work. And so far, I'd say they're doing a fantastic job. Fantastic job.
Gary, I got to tell you, it's a pleasure talking to you, my man. Those 25 minutes flew by like crazy. I think that we need to reconnect, let's say, sometime in March after Speed Weeks, and we'll do a proper preview of the 2016 Super Stock season, because I want to really get in depth with you, because I think there's going to be a lot of talent out there that maybe some folks outside of Delaware Speedway don't know about, that they need to know about. So we'll sit down and we'll do a proper Delaware Speedway preview interview, just you and I. Again, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, but all the best in 2016. I can't wait to see if you could take down back-to-back championships again.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the time, and I appreciate it. And if I don't hear from you then, I'm sure I'll see you at the Night of Champions at the Motorama show. And yeah, we're looking to have a good season.
If you will, my man. Make sure you wear something snazzy to that Night of Champions.
Only for you. I'll have to find my SLP hat.
There you go, buddy. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Gary Adriaensen. He's getting ready for the Night Champions at Motorama on March 12th, and he's also getting ready for the 2016 Delaware Speedway Super Stock season. Gary, thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thanks, buddy. Take it easy.